Welcome to class number 2, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to keep working with Cinema 4D, and now what we are going to do is actually we are going to create a new scene, and we're going to start using our own objects. Now what I want you to do, remember I told you that we have a shortcut for the creation of a new project. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control N, and that's going to help me with the creation of a new project. You have to select the interface, obviously, Control N, and now you have that. All right, so I have a new project, empty project. There's nothing in here. There's no materials at all. There's nothing. There's no a single object in here. So we need to create something. Now you saw me in our previous class that we could use this option in order to create objects, right? So that's pretty cool, and you can do that. Now I will recommend you to use this if you want to use some of these basic shapes. Now I want you to explore these by yourself. We have classes where we teach Cinema 4D in depth, and we go almost by taking every single one of the aspects of Cinema 4D. But for now, just stay with me here. I'm going to go to the main menu, and you can see that I have a menu called Create. If I click on Create, I'm going to be able to go and select Primitive, and in this case I have this other section. Very similar. Now if I click on the grabber of this Create, and then I click on the grabber, I can take this menu and make it a floating menu. Now the same thing is going to happen here. If I go to Cube and I click on here, I'm going to get access to this grabber, and I can click on this grabber, and now I'm going to be able to use this as another floating menu. So now I have this menu and I have this menu, and this kind of menu is the one that I like to use when I am using Cinema 4D. Not for the creation of the objects, because I mean this is something that you're not going to be using and creating objects like that all the time. But some of the tools that we're going to be using, for example, if I go to Mesh, for example, I can just bring this and I will have access to some of these tools, the extruding tool and the polygon pen and things like that I use very often when I am modeling. So in this case, I am going to close this, and I'm just going to make, again, I'm going to take this one and make this one available for me, because I want to see some of the objects that we can create in here. So first, I'm going to create a cube. I can click on here, and you can see that when I create a cube, there's something happening here on my objects panel. I have a cube object. Now I can double click on this cube name, and I can change the name. I can say you're going to be named my box. All right, and now I have that name. Now you can see here that when I select the object in here, it gets yellow. If I click outside, it gets gray. If I deselect it, there's nothing to show in this attributes panel. If I click on my object, you can see that now I have this, all the properties for this object are displayed in this region. Now if I click outside, again, they're gone. If I click on top of my object, then I got, again, all of my attributes, and I can start working with them. All right, perfect. Now another thing that I want you to know is that you can click on this little check mark, and you can hide your objects temporarily if you want to, and that way you can hide them. They are still there, but if you don't want to see them, because let's say that you want to create another object, I'm going to, for example, create a sphere. I can click on the sphere. Now there's a sphere in there, but because it's smaller than my cube, well, actually they have the same kind of dimensions in volume, but you know, the square is taking over the box area, or the actual template region of this volume. So I'm going to make my box temporarily hidden. So I'm just going to hide it like this, and you can see that I have a sphere here. Now I'm going to take the sphere, and I'm going to change the name of this, but instead of doing it in here, I'm going to go underneath here, and I'm going to say, you know what, from now on, you're not going to be called the sphere. You're going to be called the planet. All right, the planet. And that's the new name that I want. You can see that has been updated in here. Now I have this planet, and you can see that this planet doesn't look like a real kind of sphere. It has some kind of chunks in here that are making it not really nice. Now what I want to do is go to some of the properties or attributes of my object. In this case, they are located in this tab called Object. If I click in here, I have the segments of this sphere, and I can increase it by clicking on these little arrows, or I can just go and say 50, and they're going to jump like that, and now I have 50 segments, and I have something that looks a lot better. All right, so that's how we can create our objects. Now I can move my objects. Remember, how can we do that? Do you remember that? Perfect. If you press the letter E on your keyboard, you're going to have access to this move tool. All right, E, we can move. So when we have that tool, what you can do is click on the arrows that you have in here. There's a green, red, and blue arrow. In this case, red represents X, in this case to the right and to the left, all right? And I can move like that. Then you have another option, which is the Z dimension, which is the blue dimension, and you can go to the back and to the front of this scene. And then we have the Y dimension, which is this one, the gray one, and you can go up and down. So those three are our 3 dimensions, all right? Now you can see that I moved my object and I want to place it back to the 0 position of this scene. Now the 0 position is really cool because that is going to give you an idea of where everything is located in this 3D space. Because if we have nothing, okay, let's say that we hide everything. If we didn't have these little 3 colors, we will be lost in here. So we need something as a reference, and this is ground 0. So that's why we want to have that value always available to us. Now you can see that I moved this object and it's no longer in ground 0. So you can check in here where we have this option called position, and you can see that I have moved my objects by a couple of centimeters, and we can change these values by just selecting them like this, and I can just go 0 in X, 0 in here, 0 in here, and then I can click on apply, and that's going to place my object right at 0 position in ground 0, and I have my object again right where I want it. All right, perfect. Now, what else can we do with our objects? Something that we can do with them is, right now we have some kind of interactive objects, some kind of basic objects that really don't take a lot of information from Cinema 4D. But once we want to start dealing with the geometry of our objects, we need to make them alive. Or, well, we can just click on this object and make them editable. So if I make this sphere editable, you're going to see that something's going to change in here on the icon. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to Control, click, and drag. And you can see this little arrow. That allows me to create a copy of this object. So I'm going to create a copy. And you can see that I have the planet dot number 1, because we have 2 now. And I'm going to take this with my move tool and I'm going to move it a little bit. So this is planet number 1, this is the planet. I'm going to take now, select the planet, and I'm going to go and make it live or editable. So I'm going to click in here and I'm going to make it editable. Now you can see that something happens here. The icon of this object is no longer a sphere. You just have 3 little points like a triangle. That means that we created a polygonal kind of object, and they are not longer the same. If I want to increase the size or segments of this sphere, I can't do that in here. You can see that the parameters or attributes that I have in here are just basic, coordinates, and func. And in here, if I click on here, you can see that I have basic, coordinate, object, and func. So they are different now. They are different type of objects. And we can talk about the size in megabytes and inside the size in data mode. But for now, just keep things simple. They are 2 different objects, and this one is ready to be editable. So I can start working with it, and I can start modeling something with this object if I want to. Now, I'm not going to do that right now because we are going to start modeling in another class. But for now, I'm just going to delete this, and I'm going to keep my planet one more time. Now, I'm going to go to basics, and then I'm going to go to coordinates. And you can see that here in coordinates, I have the same values that I have in this other panel. So what I want is change the value of the X, and I want to place it at 0. And now this object is going to go back to the 0 ground, or ground 0. Perfect. Now, what else can we do with this object? Well, there's a lot of things that we can do. We can rotate it, but now this object looks like a sphere, so I am not going to be able to see if it actually rotates. So what you can do is take it, and first, instead of rotating the object, I am going to play with its size. Now, the problem with this object is that if I want to play with the size of this object, you can see we have these options here. But if I use this gizmo that I have here, I can only make the size of this object symmetrical. So everything is going to change at the same time. So everything is going to be transformed proportionally in our 3 dimensions. So we have this coordinates option, and what happens if I go and start dealing with the Y? You can see that now I am getting some sort of oval instead of a sphere. So I can click in here, set that to number 2, and now I have this object. And now if I rotate the object, I'm going to be able to actually see the difference. Now you can actually rotate the object by using the R shortcut. Remember this button in here, and now you have these 3 different colors. I'm going to get closer to my object. Don't worry about this. I'm going to get closer to the object, and now you have these 3 different values where you can rotate in Z, you can rotate in X and you can rotate in Y. All right, but right now you can see that there's no a point of doing that because how we have our object defined. It's just rotating in, we see the same kind of face, but that's what happens. So we have the rotation tool. Now another tool that we can use is actually the size tool, and you can press T as Thomas, and now you get access to these type of handles where you can move this in this direction, you can move this in this direction, and you can move this in this direction. Now the problem is that I am moving, as you can see here, this yellow kind of object, but if you take your handles, these handles are going to be moving everything proportionally because we have this kind of object. It's not editable, but if I click on this and make it editable again, now you're going to be able to see that if I move this, it's going to change its shape really nice, and this one at the same time, and I can make it change in this proportion as well independently. So that's the advantage of making objects editable or not. Now there's some other things that we can do in here, like we talked about. We can rotate, and we can now see the difference when we rotate in the Y direction, in the X direction, and on the Z direction. So we have that kind of a table, surf table or something like that. We can even we can play with this and make it a little bit thinner, and now it's going to look more like a surfer kind of table, something like that. So that's cool. And if we want to go back to the position, just go rotation 0 0 0, and now we have it right in here. Now you can see that we can rotate it and place it now like if we want to place it on the ground like that, or on the ocean, it will be like this, and if not, we can place it like that. So that's basically what we have, these three different options that allow us to move and interact with our objects. So we are going to place this object right now in here, and I will see you in our next movie. Thank you very much. Bye bye for now. Take care.